You're driving home. It's late. Red and blue lights flash in your mirror. Your heart pounds as you pull over. The officer walks up to your window and asks, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" What you say in the next 30 seconds determines whether you drive home tonight or watch your car get searched on the side of the road. And 99% of drivers get it wrong before the officer even finishes speaking. Every day, thousands of drivers talk themselves into searches, arrests, and criminal charges. Not because they did anything wrong, because they didn't know what to say. They thought being friendly meant answering every question. They thought cooperation meant confession. They were wrong. I've spent years analyzing traffic stop cases and body cam footage. What I found surprised me. The drivers who walked away weren't the ones who talked the most. They were the ones who knew exactly what to say and when to say it. 4 exact lines, in a specific sequence. The order matters. Miss one and you leave a gap in your protection. Use all 4 in the right order and you've built a legal wall that officers cannot break through without violating your constitutional rights. This is educational content only, not legal advice. Always consult an attorney in your state. Let's break down each line, starting with the one that trips up 90% of drivers in the first 10 seconds. Do you know why I pulled you over? Sounds simple. Most people guess. Was I speeding? Did I roll through that stop sign? Maybe my taillight is out? Here's the problem. You just created evidence. The body cam recorded you admitting to a violation the officer may not have even seen. One driver told me he said probably the weed smell when the officer pulled him over for a burned-out license plate light. He talked himself into a search before the officer said a word. Here's what most people don't realize. The officer is asking because he might not know. He might have pulled you over on a hunch. He's fishing, and you're about to hand him a catch. The exact words, "No, officer." That's it. 2 words. You haven't admitted anything. You haven't lied. You haven't guessed wrong. You've simply answered an honest question honestly. Officer, do you know why I pulled you over? You. No, officer. Officer, I clocked you doing 45 and a 35. You say nothing. Hands on the wheel. Let him continue. Watch the wrong way play out. Officer asks that same question. Driver says, "I might have been going a little fast. I'm running late for work. I'm sorry. I didn't realize." That driver just handed the officer a recorded confession, even if the radar was broken, even if the officer wasn't sure. That admission is now on body cam, the right way. Officer asks. You say, "No, officer." He tells you the reason. You listen. That's line 1. But refusing to guess at the beginning doesn't stop the questions from coming. You've handed over your license, registration, and insurance. The officer walks back to his car. Minutes pass. He returns. But instead of a ticket, he says, "You don't mind if I take a quick look in your car, do you?" This is a trap, and the wording is designed to confuse you. If you say yes, you just consented to a search. If you say no, he can claim you said you don't mind. Either answer gives him what he wants. The Supreme Court ruled in Schneckloth versus Bustamante that consent to search must be voluntary. But here's the thing, the officer doesn't have to tell you that you can refuse. Most people don't know they have a choice, so they say yes, or they hesitate and mumble, "I guess," while the officer is already opening their door. The exact words, "I do not consent to searches," not, "I'd rather you didn't," not, "Do you have a warrant?" not, "Why do you want to search my car?" Those responses invite negotiation. I do not consent to searches. Clear, complete, final. Officer, mind if I take a look? You. I do not consent to searches. Officer, what are you hiding? Only guilty people refuse. You. I do not consent to searches. Here's why this works. The body cam now shows you clearly, calmly refusing consent. If the officer searches anyway without probable cause, anything found may be thrown out. The phrase creates a legal record that protects you. The wrong way. Officer asks to look. Driver says, I guess if you have to. Courts have ruled that's consent. Your hesitation, your politeness, your desire to cooperate, all used against you. But here's where most people get stuck. You've said no to the search. The officer is still standing there. Now what? The officer wrote you a warning for the taillight. He hands back your documents. The traffic stop is over. But he doesn't walk away. Instead, he starts asking questions. Where are you headed tonight? Where are you coming from? Have you had anything to drink? Most drivers sit there and answer. They think they have to. They're wrong. In 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in Rodriguez versus United States that officers cannot prolong a traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the original violation. Once that warning is written, once that ticket is issued, the legal justification for detaining you is complete. But officers know something you might not. If you keep talking, you're staying voluntarily. The clock isn't running if you're choosing to sit there. The exact words, "Am I free to leave?" This phrase forces the officer to make a decision. Either you're free to go or you're being detained. There's no middle ground. Officer, just a few more questions. Where are you coming from? You. Am I free to leave? If he says yes, leave. Calmly, politely, drive away. If he says no, Everything changes. Now you're officially detained. That detention requires reasonable suspicion. And now the legal clock is running hard. Watch the wrong way unfold. The officer keeps asking questions. The driver keeps answering. 20 minutes pass. A drug dog arrives. The dog alerts. Now they're searching the car. All because the driver didn't know to ask one simple question. The right way. Stop purpose is complete. You ask, "Am I free to leave?" Officer says yes. You leave. Officer says no. You're now detained. But that detention has limits and requires justification. This phrase comes third for a reason. You use it after the original purpose of the stop is complete. But whether the officer says yes or no, there's one more phrase you need. And this one protects you from the biggest trap of all. Here's something that shocks most people. Staying silent isn't enough. In 2013, the Supreme Court ruled in Salinas versus Texas that your silence can actually be used against you in court, unless you explicitly invoke your Fifth Amendment right. Genovevo Salinas was questioned by police. He answered some questions, then went silent when asked about shotgun shells. He never said the magic words. At trial, the prosecutor argued to the jury, an innocent person would have answered that question. Salinas was convicted. The Supreme Court upheld it. Silence alone is not protected. You have to say it out loud. The exact words, "I plead the Fifth," or "I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent." Either works. What doesn't work is just sitting there quietly. Officer, have you been drinking tonight? You, I plead the Fifth. Officer, it's a simple question, yes or no. You, I plead the Fifth. He can keep asking. You keep repeating. Calmly, politely, firmly, the wrong way. Officer asks where you've been. You stay silent. You think you're protected, but you never said the words. In court, the prosecutor says, if he was innocent, why wouldn't he answer? Your silence becomes evidence of guilt. The right way. Officer asks. You clearly state, I plead the Fifth. Now your silence is constitutionally protected. The body cam shows you invoking your right. No prosecutor can use it against you. This is the fourth line for a reason. The sequence builds. First, you don't guess at the reason for the stop. Then you refuse consent to searches. Next, you ask if you're free to leave. Finally, if the questioning continues, you invoke your Fifth Amendment right. 4 lines, 4 protections, 1 protocol. Those are your 4 lines, but knowing them isn't enough. You have to be able to say them when your heart is pounding and an officer is standing at your window. Here they are one more time. Memorize them. Line 1. No, officer. Use this when the officer asks if you know why you're pulled over. Don't guess. Don't admit. Don't help build a case against yourself. Line 2. I do not consent to searches. Use this anytime an officer asks to search your car, your bag, your pockets, anything. Say it clearly. Repeat it if pushed. Line 3. Am I free to leave? Use this when the original purpose of the stop appears complete. This forces the officer to clarify your status, detained or free, nothing in between. Line 4. I plead the Fifth. Use this when the officer asks investigative questions. Where are you going? Where have you been? Have you been drinking? Invoke your right explicitly. Print these out. Put them in your glove box. Practice saying them until they feel natural. Now, physical safety. Keep your hands visible on the steering wheel. Turn on your dome light if it's dark. If you need to reach for your glove box, announce it first. My registration is in my glove box. I'm going to reach for it now. Move slowly. Stay calm. Never argue. Never resist physically. Remember, the fight is in court, not on the roadside. You're not being difficult when you use these phrases. You're being protected. The Constitution gives you these rights. Using them isn't suspicious. It's smart. If you found this valuable and think every driver should know this protocol, I'd appreciate a subscribe. This is educational content, not legal advice. Laws vary by state. If you're facing charges, consult a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction. But what happens when the officer says those 3 words, I smell marijuana, even if there's nothing in your car? That changes everything. And that's what we're covering next. The smartest drivers aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who know exactly when to stop.